A man who has never faced hardship is a man who has never truly lived. Welcome back to Chasing Masculinity, where we navigate the challenges modern men face and try to define what it means to be masculine. Men today are being told that life should be easy, that struggle is something to avoid, and that comfort is the ultimate goal. But what has that mindset created? A generation of men who are anxious, who are unfulfilled, and who are lost. Struggle isn't the enemy, it is the path to strength. Hardship is what forges men into something greater, shaping him into a leader, a provider, a man of conviction. But modern society teaches the opposite. We live in a culture that encourages men to avoid pain, to seek comfort at all costs, and to run away from anything difficult. As a result, we have men who are physically weak, who are emotionally fragile, and most importantly, spiritually disconnected. The world has tried to strip masculinity of its trials, but in doing so, it has stripped men of their power. Yet, Scripture tells us that hardship isn't something to run from, it's something to endure. It's something that refines us. James 1:2-4 says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." The fire of struggle isn't meant to destroy us, it's meant to forge us into something stronger. Today we're going to dive deep into why men need hardship, why struggle is not only inevitable, but necessary, and how to embrace it, and how to make it into the man you were meant to be. All right, let's get into it. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is the purpose of hardship in a man's life. So I like to think of struggle as the path to growth, kind of like how iron sharpens iron in Proverbs 27. It is that hardship that shapes men into something greater. Without this resistance, without this hardship, there is no strength. There's no necessity to overcome. Just like a dull blade needs sharpening, a man needs trials to become sharp. Men who never face hardship remain weak, untested, and fragile. If a Ferrari sits in a garage and is never used, is it a Ferrari? There needs to be a race. There needs to be a purpose. There needs to be a reason for it to do the thing that it was meant to be, for there to be the struggle, for it to overcome, so that it can be refined and defined as to what its intent and purpose is. It's this hardship that refines men, this strength, this masculine strength that we should be striving for. It isn't given. It's earned through overcoming this adversity. The greatest men in history were not born great. They weren't predestined to lead worlds. They were made great through struggle. One of the great Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, says, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Adversity creates wisdom, resilience, and leadership. I always like to frame this into the biblical perspective. These trials produce this perseverance and character, like it says in James 2-4, like we talked about at the beginning, where it is through these many trials of many kinds that our faith will be tested, and that is what's going to produce the perseverance. And then it says, "Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." It is this struggle that is going to strengthen your faith. God does not give men the easy path because he calls them to be strong. If we're called to be strong, that gift isn't going to be strength. It's going to be the thing that we can use to make us strong. Think of Job's suffering in the Old Testament and how he remained faithful through those trials. Then, when he was given all the gifts at the end and he had this life of abundance after just years of immense struggle and pain and suffering and rejection, he was strong enough to handle these gifts, to handle these blessings. You can also think of historical examples like Theodore Roosevelt, the transformation from this sickly child to a rugged leader through the struggle. It was through these challenges that allowed him, that enabled him to do the great things. As a child, Roosevelt suffered from severe asthma and was very physically weak. His father even told him, Theodore, you have the mind, but you do not have the body. And without the help of the body, the mind cannot go as far as it should. You must make your body. He got into boxing and hiking, and through his relentless effort, he transformed himself into a warrior and led the Rough Riders, becoming one of the toughest and most stereotypically masculine U.S. presidents. What the lesson is weakness is not an excuse, it's the starting point. It's the necessity for strength to blossom through. Now, I get it. I'm a man. I'm a human. I'm lazy. I don't want to intentionally seek pain or struggle. But what are the dangers of this comfort-driven life? Society today prioritizes ease and comfort and this instant gratification over resilience. And all these technological advancements have just made everything convenient, from food to entertainment, even relationships. It's so easy to sit on my couch. I can order anything I want on my phone to be delivered to my door, including food, anything I could need for the house, anything I could desire or want. I can find any women I want around the world, or I could just stream it through pornography. Same with entertainment. I can stream anything that my mind could imagine, all while I sit on my couch and do nothing. This modern man is addicted to comfort and to avoid hardship at all costs, because why would you? Everything is at the ease of our fingertips. Comfort, though, is the enemy of growth, and this cycle of weak men has created hard times. We all know the saying, hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. We are now in the weak men creating hard times phase, because without the struggle, men have become entitled and soft and unable to handle the adversity needed to truly be masculine. The downfall of Rome was due to luxury and decadence and avoidance of hardship. Rome thrived when it was built on discipline and conquest and hardship. It was this iron force that nobody could defeat. But as it grew, it accumulated all of this wealth, and its men, they became weak, and they started prioritizing pleasure instead of their duty to the Roman Empire. And then the empire crumbled because it no longer had the men that were there that fought to preserve it. It no longer had the leaders that were capable of leading Rome down the right path. The same thing can be said for the Greek Empire as well. The common thought in Greek philosophy was work was not for the man, it was for the slave. Anything that was work, anything that was toilsome, was not intended for man. It should just be leisure and pleasure, and that led to the fall of what could have been a great Greek empire as well. It was this idea that this placidity in life, this lack of needing a masculine presence, that leads to the foundation crumbling beneath it. So what are the modern consequences of the weak men creating hard times? There is a lack of purpose. There is an addiction that is taking hold over men. How many people do you know now say they have some sort of mental health crisis because something isn't right? Therefore, if something's not right and it's not physical, it must be mental, deductive reasoning. If something isn't right, something doesn't feel like it's in tune, it has to be your mental health unless you have a broken arm. Depression rates and suicide rates in men are at an all-time high, and a lot of young men feel lost because they lack the struggle. Without a battle, without a reason to persevere, they have no mission, and that's what keeps you going. Social media and entertainment have replaced these real challenges with this fake stimulation. The modern world has removed our need for comfort and lied to us, saying that comfort is the standard, not a luxury. Historically, comfort was rare and actually had to be earned. Today, society has flipped that script. Struggle is now seen as optional when in reality it is necessary. Men must actively seek out hardship in order to grow. And this is how society has failed men, by removing this hardship. Boys are raised in environments that shield from struggle. There are safe spaces and participation trophies. There are young men being raised without consequences, where failure is avoided rather than confronted. Schools no longer allow competitive sports where kids can actually lose, and many boys are never taught how to deal with that adversity, that thing that they have to overcome. There's schools and media pushing this anti-masculine agenda that discourages this healthy level of competition and risk-taking and leadership. Masculine traits like assertiveness and competitiveness and ambition are labeled as toxic and are snuffed out at a young age. Boys are told to be passive, to conform, and to suppress their natural instincts to play in the roughhouse. The result is they're going to grow into men who lack purpose and confidence. They were taught to not be a man. The truth is, young men who are lost, who are directionless, and are unprepared for real-world challenges are just set up for failure. Boys grow up without learning how to fail, so when they do, they collapse. They don't know how to fight for their families or their careers or their faith. Without this hardship, they don't have the strength required to endure the hardships of life. Think of the cultural contrast to ancient warrior societies like the Spartans or the Vikings versus our modern culture's avoidance of difficulty. Spartan boys were taken from their mothers at age 7 and trained in brutal conditions, and Viking warriors faced life-threatening conditions from an early age just to build resilience. These societies created strong men by embracing that hardship, and then contrasting that with today's society where people avoid even the smallest discomforts like having to drive themselves to the grocery store and buy their own groceries. I want to now dive into the physical hardship as a path to masculinity. The mind is going to follow the body. It's not the other way around like people often think. Physical challenges are going to strengthen your mental toughness. A weak body is going to lead to a weak mind. Discipline in one area is going to spread to others. Modern men are physically weaker than previous generations due to sedentary lifestyles. Pushing your body builds self-respect and discipline and honestly confidence, which is something that I think men need a lot more of today. Think of military training and how it turns undisciplined men, young 18-year-old boys, into these warriors. Boot camp is actually designed to break weak men and then to build strong ones from that. Military takes men who have never faced struggle and forces them into leaders. Why? Because hardship works. This struggle works. Think of David Goggins and his ultramarathons and the power of endurance sports. Goggins went from this 300-pound and directionless man to one of the toughest endurance athletes in the world. He sought out suffering intentionally because he knew it would make him stronger. Goggins said, "You have to build calluses on your mind just like you have to build calluses on your hands." This is why things like lifting weights and cold exposure and intense physical challenges are going to build resilience. Strength training isn't just about muscles, it's about mental fortitude. Cold exposure, ice baths, cold showers, it forces the mind to endure discomfort. And then intense physical struggles are going to create men who can handle all sorts of challenges in life. PR or ER? It's a common gym saying. You either PR, which is get a new personal record by lifting the heaviest weight you've ever done in whatever before, got the fastest time, whatever that is, it is your personal best. Or ER, emergency room. It's a way of saying you're going hard no matter what. You're either going to hit your limit or you are going to go to the hospital trying. Now, I'm not actually recommending this, but it is a fun phrase to say, and it certainly is motivating to PR or ER. But I want to flip that for a second. How about ER or PR? Every man needs a choice. embrace resistance, ER, or stay weak and make excuses, PR. Embrace resistance, ER, seek out the hardship, push yourself, face challenges, or PR, personal regression, make excuses, avoid struggle, choose comfort over growth. Every man makes this choice. Choose wisely. Now let's flip from the physical to the mental and how emotional and mental struggles will also make men wiser. Hardship teaches patience, discipline, and humility. Men who have never suffered often lack this wisdom and perspective. Struggle forces men to develop character traits necessary for success. So there's patience, like learning to endure difficulty without this immediate reward. You're not doing something to get something. You have to have patience. And then discipline, sticking to a goal despite the setbacks. You have to have a strong, built-up, intentional level of discipline. Then humility, realizing that you are not invincible. You are not great where you are at, and you need to improve. This is why rejection and failure and setbacks on the path to masculinity are necessary. Every great man has failed multiple times before succeeding. Failure is the best teacher. It exposes weakness and shows where improvement is needed. A man who has never failed will crumble the first time he actually meets this real adversity that he will meet in our world, in today's life. Maybe it's just my engineer mind, but I always like to go back to Thomas Edison when he was inventing the light bulb. He made over 1,000 unsuccessful attempts before perfecting the perfect light bulb. When he asked about his failures, he said, "I have not failed. I have just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Failure is not the opposite of success. It's a part of the process. If you're going to think of success as a linear path, it's not left or right, failure or success. It is you have to hit failure multiple times, most likely, before hitting success. It's a necessary point along the one-way journey to success. And that's why emotional resilience is key. It's necessary. The ability to endure pain and hardship without breaking. Emotionally fragile men can't handle leadership. They can't handle relationships or just challenges in general. Strength is not about avoiding struggle. It's about standing firm in it. It's about developing that emotional resilience, learning to accept failure without this self-pity, learning to take responsibility for setbacks instead of blaming others, and understanding that the struggle is temporary, but that growth that you're getting through the struggle, that is permanent. So why is hardship a necessity for leadership? All great leaders have faced adversity. Weak men are not going to make good leaders. Leadership is not about comfort, it's about that responsibility. A man who has never struggled will collapse under the weight that leadership is going to thrust upon them. Think of some examples of hardship-forged leaders, like Winston Churchill and his struggles before leading Britain in World War II. Before World War II, Churchill was dismissed from political office and ridiculed. He faced failure and depression and setbacks for decades. But when that war finally came, he was ready because he had been through the struggle. He'd seen the rejection. He's been spat on and turned away already. So he knew what it was going to take, and he was ready for what the toll that political office was going to take upon him. He had seen that struggle before. His leadership actually turned the tide of World War II. He said, if you're going through hell, keep going. Or you could even think of David in the Old Testament and his trials that he had to endure before becoming king. Think of all the Psalms he wrote and the torture he was going through as he was on the run from Saul. David was anointed as the future king, but he had to endure years of struggle. He lived as a fugitive as he was hunted by Saul and his men. He fought in countless battles to prove his strength, and he faced betrayal and hardships before actually becoming king. The lesson there is clear. God prepares men through struggle. It's through this struggle that leadership is earned. It's earned through these trials. Leadership requires the ability to carry burdens. Men who avoid struggle are going to crumble under pressure. A leader is the first to take responsibility and the last to take credit. If a man can't handle the personal struggle, he'll never be able to lead others. True leadership is forged in that adversity. So this all sounds quite difficult, but what is the role in faith in overcoming struggle? Honestly, hardships are going to draw men closer to God. Suffering is going to force reliance upon Him. When everything is easy, men forget God. Struggle reminds men that they're not in control. God is. C.S. Lewis said, "Pain insists upon being attended to. God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pains. It is His megaphone to rouse a deaf world." Going back to Job's suffering from the Old Testament and his ultimate restoration, Job lost everything, his wealth, his children, his health. Despite his suffering, he still remained faithful to God. Despite all of his friends ridiculing him and coming to him in wisdom saying, "You are in the wrong. It is because of you that this is happening," he still remained faithful to God and said, "No, I am not in the wrong." And God ultimately restored him. But because Job's strength came from enduring the trial, he did not give up faith. Hardship is the test of faith. Those who are able to endure are going to grow stronger. Think of Paul's endurance when he went through persecution. He was beaten and he was imprisoned. He was nearly killed multiple times for his faith. Instead of giving up, he rejoiced in the suffering because he knew it built his character. Romans 5 says, "We rejoice in our sufferings. Know that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope." The lesson is a man's faith is made stronger through his trials. This is why a man needs to orientate himself below God before he can lead others. A man cannot lead if he is ruled by his own pride and desires. True strength comes from submission to something greater than one's self. A man who follows God is unshakable. His strength is not his own. So, as we're wrapping up, what are some practical ways to actually embrace this hardship? Well, there's voluntary hardship. It's choosing difficult things to build resilience. Alex Hormozy said, "If you have two paths in front of you, choose the harder one. If the easy one was the right path, you would have already taken it." Strength comes from intentionally seeking out struggle. Comfort makes men weak. Hardship makes men strong. Then there is the clear and obvious physical challenges. So strength training, endurance training, cold exposure, fasting, whatever that is. Find ways to put yourself through the temporary suffering to make yourself stronger. I personally like strength training. It teaches you patience and discipline and self-respect. You're going to be able to see growth over time only through discipline. There's also endurance running or endurance training. That's going to force mental toughness. Your mind is going to quit before your body does every time. And that's where things like cold exposures can come in, because that's going to build resistance and force the mind to embrace that discomfort. Same with fasting. It's going to teach discipline over these physical cravings. It's going to teach you to have reliance on God above your body. What about mental discipline? Well, you can read difficult books, because reading hard books develops wisdom and it develops focus to keep going and to actually intentionally think and put your mind into the place it needs to be to understand. Then there's limiting the distractions that are around you, like social media and entertainment, that are going to weaken the mind. If they're not serving you, just cut them out. Then there's also embracing this solitude. A man must be able to stand alone before he can lead others. Now, this isn't necessarily a call to stoicism, although there are some good principles that can be pulled from stoicism. Being a lone wolf is not good. You need a community around you. You need a partner in life as well. But you need to be able to be comfortable alone. You need to be able to, on your own, be built on a firm foundation. And others can help you do that. But without you being strong alone, without being able to temporarily embrace solitude to grow, you're not going to be able to go out and lead others. You can also embrace emotional resilience, facing things like rejection, asking for more, trying to learn to handle the words no. That means stop avoiding that conflict and to actually be direct but still respectful during those difficult conversations you need to be having. And then also take responsibility. You have to own your mistakes instead of blaming others. Lastly, there's faith-based resilience. So that's praying through the struggles and trusting in God's plan. Prayer is not about removing hardship. It's about enduring it. Trust that God is using struggle to prepare you for greater things. Isaiah 41:10 says, "Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you in my righteous right hand." A life without difficulty is a life without growth. If you've never faced adversity, you've never been tested. And if you've never been tested, you don't truly know what you're capable of. Hardship isn't something to be avoided. It's the very thing that makes men strong. It's what separates those who wish they were resilient from those who become resilient. The men who embrace struggle, who lean into discomfort, are the ones who will build true confidence, wisdom, and leadership. How will you know how much you can bench if you've never actually tried? Yes, you can hypothetically say, I can easily do 3 plates, but have you? Until you endure that struggle, until you actually go out there and try and fail, you don't know what you're capable of. You very well could be capable of much more than you ever thought. So that's my challenge to you. Stop running from struggle. Instead, seek it out. Push yourself beyond your comfort zone every single day. Choose the harder path because that's the one that leads to strength. If something scares you, it's probably the thing you need to do. If something is difficult, it's probably where you need to grow the most. True masculinity is not about avoiding pain. It's about facing it head on and becoming stronger because of it. So what's one hard thing you can take on this week? Where's one challenge you've been avoiding? Face it. Step into the fire. Because on the other side of struggle is the man that you were meant to become. Thanks for tuning into Chasing Masculinity. If you found this episode helpful, share it with another man who needs to hear this message. And if you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what's coming next. Until next time, keep pushing forward, keep embracing the struggle, and keep chasing masculinity.